Let's get more now on that vote on whether to impeach Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff. I'm joined by Timothy Power, who's Professor of Political Science at the University of Oxford. Dr. Power, many thanks for joining us this morning. Now, it does look like Rousseff is on her way out. I suppose that the next question now is what happens next? Because surely by getting rid of Rousseff, we're not going to solve all of Brazil's problems.
No, this vote will not solve all of Brazil's problems. Brazil has a number of crises, including an economic crisis, the Zika crisis, a political crisis, the upcoming Olympics, and so forth. But the main task of the next president will be to try to put together a government of national unity that brings together as many parties as possible in Congress. One thing that has to be understood is that Brazil is one of the most fragmented party systems in the world. There's over 30 parties in the Brazilian National Congress. Every government is a coalition government. So I think one of the lessons of the Dilma Rousseff experience in government is that she was not a very effective coalition manager. So when push came to shove and she faced the crisis about breaking budget laws, she didn't have enough defenders in Congress to back her up on the first vote and then on this vote in the Senate. So the next president, Michel Temer, who will become acting president probably by noon today, will have to put together a coalition that brings together as many parties as possible in order to back up the choices that he's making for his next government. He wants to make choices that are going to be acceptable to the markets, but also that indicate to Brazilian citizens, particularly some of whom may have voted for Dilma Rousseff, that this will be an inclusive government of national unity.
And what kind of president do you expect Temer to be? Because he himself is facing allegations of corruption.
Yeah, Michel Temer is not the kind of president, not the kind of politician who would have won in a direct election for president. He's very much known as a backroom insider politician. He's led his party now for 14 years. He's been president of the lower house, I think, 2 or 3 times. So he's what you would call a Brasilia insider. He's not going to be the kind of person who has a natural touch with the population. But then again, neither did Dilma Rousseff. The real gold standard for that was her predecessor, Lula, who was president from 2003 to 2010. I think what we'll see from Michel Temer is probably reliance on a frontline team of ministers that are big names, some of them who are very much approved by the markets, and some who have international experience as well. But I expect him to be more of a reserved, guarded president, staying out of the limelight, in part because of what you said. He has corruption allegations surrounding himself. His own popularity is not very high. And if you believe some of the polls, a large majority of Brazilians would also like to see him not take the office. So basically, he has to earn his position in office, and he'll probably do that by taking a low-key approach.
A lot of the political storm we're seeing at the moment is down to what has been going on economically, people suffering from poverty, inflation, and so on. Brazil was at one time seen, though, as a rising economic power. Can it still achieve that potential?
I think Brazil has seen ups and downs, and it had a very long cycle of prosperity that began in the early 2000s. I think that was driven in part by favorable international conditions like the commodities boom, which ran from roughly 2004 to 2011 or 12 in Brazil. Since the commodities boom, commodities prices have come down, Brazil's economy has slowed. But part of it is also a series of bad choices in terms of the management of the national oil company, and other such factors. I think that we can't forget that the period that Dilma Rousseff and her predecessor Lula were in power was a period in which about 30 to 40 million Brazilians were brought out of poverty. I think the main interest of the next government is to make sure that those 30 or 40 million people who have just risen into this new middle class do not backslide. They feel very vulnerable. They're very concerned that this economic recession is going to push them out of their newfound class status back into poverty. And so I think one of the things that Michel Temer is doing right now is signaling that he will not reverse the major social programs of the last government, particularly because those programs are more needed than ever before, given that Brazil is in its worst economic recession since the 1930s.
Okay, Dr. Timothy Power, really good to talk to you, Professor of Political Science at the University of Oxford. Many thanks.